Well, good Monday morning, everyone. I'm meteorologist Thomas Patrick, and thank you very much for joining us on this exclusive KREM 2 Plus live stream. It's October 13th, and we have a weather impact alert day, really due to the seasonal changes that we experienced yesterday and today, more so for the winds, which are just starting to increase as we get into the midday hours. So I'm going to take a deep dive into the storm system responsible for our big time cool down, which again felt yesterday, in addition to the strong winds, which will be more felt today than not. So let's dive in to all of these weather impacts. First of all, when I say seasonal shift, I mean, it got to the point where we got snow in the mountains for the first time this season. So a lot of scenes starting to look like this. Schweitzer Mountain this morning, at least a few inches of snow on the ground. Same story at Silver. This is actually a live picture just after 11 a.m. And can you see the active snowfall on this Monday? So a little bit of precipitation still in North Idaho. At the higher elevations, it is snow. At the lower elevations, it's still just water and still just rainfall here. But we're way more focused in on winds as opposed to rain or snow or any active precipitation. That stuff should be pretty light. Not so much the winds. So again, these are our two main weather impacts, that colder weather, that seasonal shift into really the second half of the fall season, and these strong winds, which will be more felt today. So when we look at our weather impact alert day, we're more in line with the wind speeds here and more focused in on that. Impact is wind speeds up to 40 miles per hour. Between about now and 6 p.m., we're already getting into the midday. So with that being said, at those wind speeds, some tree branches could get knocked down in those strongest winds, especially since all the leaves are really just still on those trees. It just kind of gathers and parachutes that wind a little bit more heavily. So that way it could certainly knock down some tree branches. Otherwise, we're going to see a ton of leaves and pine needles on the ground by the end of the day. It takes a windstorm to really just put all of that down on the ground. So you'll notice it, especially if you have to rake your own front yard, you're going to have a ton of leaves by the end of the day. Aside from that, you'll have to secure those loose objects. That means if you have any, basketballs, volleyballs in the front yard, make sure they're in the garage. But sooner than later, otherwise they will be down at the end of the street with the winds expected this strong. So here's our weather setup. I'm already going to put the information on the screen. Low pressure region actually gliding southward along the Oregon coast, but strong enough to create what is called a pressure gradient. So that's low pressure, and basically think of it like a slope, like a trampoline slope. And we are sitting along that slope, so the winds are just guiding along that, and in this case being drawn very heavily into the low pressure's core, or the storm system's core. So our winds are out of the north and east. And if you've lived for any duration here in the inland Northwest and in Spokane, you know that if the winds are northeasterly, that's a cold wind because it tends to take the air out of northern Canada, the polar continental air, and that's what keeps things cold when the winds are in that particular direction. So that's what we're noticing, a strong pressure gradient, hence stronger wind speeds being forecasted for. In our case, we're already between about 25 and 40 mile per hour wind gusts as we've passed 11 a.m. already. Moses Lake leads the way with a 38 mile per hour wind gust, that just minutes ago. Spokane, nothing too severe, but you see surrounding us in Coeur d'Alene and Deer Park reports close to about 30 miles per hour. So these are the strongest wind speeds felt so far. And I think they'll stay in this range for the rest of the daytime hours. After sunset, it'll start to calm down, but realistically, 30 to 40 mile per hour wind gusts will be pretty common and in these same locations. Sandpoint, Coeur d'Alene, Spokane, Ritzville, Moses Lake, even Grand Coulee and Omak will get a fair share of stronger winds. 30 to 40 mile per hour wind gusts. Probably not so strong that it's going to do a ton of damage in the region. Like I said, a lot of leaves and pine needles on the ground, but we're not talking about a windstorm level of devastation. Just way more of an annoyance than anything else. Our modeling is doing a great job at finding that spot. You see these orange and red shades in that same corridor. Moses Lake, Ritzville, Spokane, even up to Coeur d'Alene and Sandpoint, all painted in red. That's the 30 to 40 mile per hour wind speeds. So it's a narrow but pretty good corridor of stronger winds. They're out of the northeast and they'll start to calm just a little bit at night. And certainly for tomorrow, a way more manageable 10 to 15 mile per hour wind. So these strongest winds being experienced between now and about 6 p.m. Here's the thing, no wind advisories. You don't see anything on the map unless you look real closely. Bellingham actually has the wind advisory in Washington State, the sole wind advisory. So why not? Well, the National Weather Service uses 45 miles per hour as their threshold for activating wind advisories. For us at KREM 2, we have our weather impact alert days. We do not have to match what the Weather Service says, line for line here. So in this case, we wanted to be more lenient in that end to make sure that you are prepared and alerted for fairly strong winds, but it is technically just below these wind advisory thresholds. That's why the damage is not going to be widespread or severe. I just think the annoyance and the inconvenience of all those leaves and pine needles and just a generally windy and cold day kind of outweighs that by a little bit, especially since, last week was almost 80 degrees and today it felt like it was in the 20s. So obviously a big change in just the last couple of days warranting that. Kind of the same story for winter weather advisories. By the way, they were just expired over the Cascades minutes ago. So those were allowed to expire as of 11 a.m. But you saw there was a little lingering snow at Silver Mountain and in the Silver Valley. We'll show you that in a second. Doppler radar is the next slide here. One more thing, fall colors. I mentioned the leaves a couple times here. We're actually very close to the peak season. I have another segment here on KREM 2 Plus. You can find that in one of the lower bars here, the interactive tabs. We're close to our peak of fall colors, and a windy day like this will actually push us closer into the peak of fall colors faster than you think, really because it's going to knock down a lot of those leaves and kind of tip the scales more in that direction here. So just make sure to take note of the beautiful colors that are out there, especially when it's sunnier for the rest of the week, because we should be peaking fall colors this week. And if not tomorrow, certainly by Friday at the latest. Temperature-wise, it has been cold. Probably didn't need me to tell you that, but yesterday was our first day where our high temperatures stayed below 50 degrees. And that's what activated our weather impact alert days in the first place here, was just this huge seasonal shift from a near 80-degree day. Remember, that was last Thursday. It was 79 to a high of just 46. So it got 33 degrees colder in the span of just 3 days. That is a humongous change overall. Obviously, that was felt with the widespread rain, a little bit of wind, but just super cold temperatures. That weather is still here today. The highs stay in the 40s. Less rain today, but it's those northeasterly winds that keep that cold weather locked in place. As mentioned, if our winds ever come out of the northeast, whether that's fall, winter, or spring, that gives us our coldest possible weather, because it's taking that polar continental air mass out of northern Canada and trying to slide as much of it in place. It does help that a lot of our valleys, especially in North Idaho, like towards the Lake Pend Oreille and up highways 95 and 2, really the air just seeps through those valleys and it gets deposited towards Coeur d'Alene and Spokane. That is just quite literally how it works when we get northeasterly winds, is that cold air gets squeezed in between those valleys. So we tend to get colder weather when our winds are northeasterly, really in the next 8 months or so. You'll still find that temperatures are mid-50s, still cooler than average for the day, but a second straight day in the 40s. Even with a little sunshine and less rain, it's all the wind's fault in this case. As skies clear tonight, we're in for a clear and cold evening. Tomorrow morning's low temperatures all the way down to 33. We have not yet hit 32, the freezing mark, yet this season. Spokane has not had our first freeze, but we will be close the next 3 or 4 days, or really 3 or 4 nights in a row, to get to that first 32-degree reading of the season. This is also pretty close to average. It's technically about a week late in terms of our first frost of the season. That exact date is October 9th, so we're in that realm. This is expected, this is normal, but it is a big shift compared to what we've experienced recently, and really for the first half of the fall season, if you will. All right, now to Doppler radar. There's that snow that's over the Silver Valley. There's also a little bit of rain that's drifting through the Palouse. The direction is northerly, so it just went through Steptoe Butte. It's over Rosalia right now, and if it continues this path would actually be close to Cheney and Airway Heights and Spokane, probably within the next 1 to 2 hours. That would be noon or 1 o'clock. We're watching that. It would all be very light rain, nothing like yesterday where we got about 1/3 of an inch of rain overall. Kind of the same story for Coeur d'Alene. You might get a sprinkle or so. It is warm enough for rain and not snow, but the higher elevations like you saw at Silver Mountain, they are getting a little bit more of a dusting of snowfall. I think it's probably a close call at Lookout Pass. I would be curious to see if the pass is actually seeing snow or if it's a rain-snow split or if it's just melting as it hits the ground. It's probably in that realm, kind of like what we saw yesterday where the snow was on the sides of Lookout Pass, like on the dirt and the slopes, but it wasn't necessarily sticking to the ground and to the roads, which is obviously good news there. We don't want it too slippery too early in the year. It looks like about the same story for this Monday. Our modeling does keep a bit of that light precipitation over North Idaho and that I-90 corridor through about 2 p.m. You even see this little spot close to Liberty Lake and Post Falls. If it does rain, it's all very light. It'll just be a couple hundredths of an inch. Nothing major there. Really, the story is the skies are clearing through the day. And by tonight, that's why we're forecasting low temperatures well down into the 30s. By then, it won't be as windy outside, thankfully. Remember, the strongest winds are really going to be felt between now and about 6 p.m. Again, that was the whole reason for this live weather impact alert stream in the first place. The stronger winds, the seasonal shift, working in combination to ultimately make this the second straight crummy weather day for the inland Northwest. Remember, highs yesterday, 46, high temperature today, 49. So not super fun to be outside. Again, a bit of some stronger winds, just a lot of leaves and twigs and pine needles on the ground. The occasional tree branch could snap off with winds as strong as 40 miles per hour. That's what we'll be monitoring through the afternoon. Right now, our maximum wind speeds have been between 25 and 40 across the inland Northwest. I'm meteorologist Thomas Patrick. Thank you very much for joining us on KREM 2 Plus for this live stream. We'll be back at KREM 2 News at noon in just a few minutes. Until then, stay warm, stay cozy, and of course, stay safe. We'll see you later and have a great Monday.